Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's just dive straight into this one, because today we are going somewhere a little dark. We're going on a journey that is equal parts totally fascinating and honestly a little terrifying. We are going to explore the philosophical descent from absolute, rock-solid certainty into profound existential doubt. Now, you know I love untangling complex ideas, but today we're taking a more contemplative turn to systematically tear down the very reality you think you're sitting in right now. So brace yourself, because by the end of this explainer, the ground beneath your feet, it might not feel so solid anymore.
First, I want you to do something for me. Right now, wherever you are, just hold up your hand and look at it. How many fingers do you see? Go ahead and wiggle them around a bit. You can see them moving, right? You can feel the stretch in your joints. You are entirely, 100% certain that they are physically right there. It is the ultimate sensory comfort. It's the immediate, intimate anchor of your own body in the physical world.
But I kind of have to drop the floor out from under you right off the bat. Because the unsettling truth is, you cannot actually prove a single one of those fingers is real. Not your hand, not the chair you're sitting in, not the room around you that just feels like it's naturally there whether you're looking at it or not. If you try, right in this exact moment, to find one concrete, irrefutable piece of evidence that what you're experiencing is real and not just some flawless, generated imitation, you won't be able to do it. From inside your own head, finding objective proof of reality is literally impossible.
And the reason for this comes down to the basic mechanics of how we perceive things. Everything you know about the outside world arrives in your brain the exact same way. Light hits your eyes, pressure hits your skin, air vibrates against your eardrums. Your brain takes all these raw physical signals into the pitch black inside of your skull, and it translates them into colors and touch and sound. It builds a picture. So the absolute crucial point here is this: you have never once touched reality directly. You have only ever touched your brain's simulated picture of it.
This brings us to a clinical, inescapable trap that philosophers call the egocentric predicament. Basically, this is your absolute inability to step outside your own mind to compare your brain's picture against the real thing. Just pause and let that vertigo set in for a second. You are sealed in. There is literally no door out of your skull to go check on the true nature of the universe. The final stop for every sight and sound is just you, alone in the dark. And from the inside of that sealed room, a perfect fake and the real thing, they look exactly the same. Now, if you think that sounds like pure sci-fi, consider that you actually live through a version of this every single night. Let's compare the waking world to the dream world. When you're dreaming, the whole thing feels completely real while you're inside it. You try to run and your legs feel like they're stuck in wet cement, you're falling with nothing to grab onto, or maybe your teeth are crumbling out of your mouth. And while it's happening, you don't stop to think, wow, this is strange. You can't test your way out of it, because any test you do, like looking at your hands or pinching yourself, is just being produced by the dream itself. You only realize it wasn't real when you wake up and have a solid waking world to compare it against. So the truly terrifying question is, right now, while you're awake, what wider world are you measuring this waking reality against?
This creeping existential doubt, it isn't new. Actually, it has evolved right alongside our technological progress. We can map out this timeline of doubt starting in the 1600s with René Descartes, moving straight through to 1981 with Hilary Putnam, and then landing in the modern era in 2003 with Nick Bostrom. As our tools for understanding the world have grown more complex, the scenarios we imagine for how we might be fooled have grown way more sophisticated and, frankly, much harder to escape.
Nearly 400 years ago, René Descartes sat down with this exact thought. He realized that if a dream can feel so completely convincing from the inside, literally nothing he sensed in his waking life could prove he wasn't dreaming right then. So he pushed the idea further. He imagined an evil demon, an infinitely powerful being, utterly devoted to deceiving him about everything: the ground beneath his feet, the sky above him, even his own physical body. Descartes went hunting for just one single thing that a demon couldn't fake, and he found almost nothing left standing.
Fast forward to 1981, and the philosopher Hilary Putnam updated this exact same doubt, but into a sterile technological nightmare. Picture this: you're just a brain floating in a tank of fluid, kept alive and wired directly into a supercomputer. The machine feeds that brain the exact electrical signals a real body would send: the taste of a hot cup of coffee, the heavy weight of a blanket, the face of someone it loves. That brain would experience an entire, rich, full life, and it would have absolutely no way to discover the tank, because any test it ran would just be more signals fed to it by the machine. The part that should deeply bother us here? From the inside, that brain's experience would be completely identical to yours right now.
For a long time, the whole brain in a vat thing was just a thought experiment.
mostly because nobody could actually build that machine. But in 2003, Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom pointed out something incredibly simple and really hard to argue with. The human brain runs on roughly 100 trillion connections firing in patterns. Now, that is a massive number, but it is finite, which means it's computable. If a mind is just a finite thing to compute, then an advanced civilization wouldn't just build one tank. They could build a computer big enough to run billions of minds at once, easily simulating conscious beings to study their own history, or honestly, even just for fun. Sort of the way we create worlds in video games, just with a much, much better graphics card. And when you look at it this way, the math brilliantly illustrates the terrifying odds of our situation. If an advanced civilization ever gets to the point where they can simulate consciousness, they aren't going to run it just once. They will run millions or billions of these simulated worlds, each one packed with people who are completely sure they are real. So if real biological beings ever build even a handful of these systems, simulated minds would outnumber flesh and blood minds by something like 1 billion to 1. So when you ask yourself which kind of mind you most likely are, the math really doesn't flatter you. Statistically speaking, the odds overwhelmingly suggest your simulated code.
And the existential threat actually gets even broader than that. Let's look at the people around you. You just naturally assume that when your friend laughs, they feel that laugh the exact same way you do. But you have never once felt anyone else's experience. Philosophers describe a theoretical creature called a philosophical zombie. It acts flawlessly human. It walks, talks, and flinches when it stubs its toe. But on the inside, the lights are off. Nobody is home. There's no actual inner experience happening. And no test could ever tell a philosophical zombie apart from a real person because their outward behavior is identical. You cannot actually prove that people around you feel anything at all.
This maps perfectly onto what philosopher David Chalmers famously called the hard problem of consciousness. See, we can map the exact neurons that fire in your brain when you look at the color red. But we absolutely cannot explain why that physical firing comes wrapped in a vivid, subjective experience of redness instead of just happening silently in the dark like everything else in the physical universe. Because we can't figure out how our biological meat brains produce an experience, it creates a massive loophole. If we don't know how biology does it, maybe a powerful enough computer could do it too.
And then things get really weird, because we start finding what look like literal glitches in the physical system of our universe. Scientists point out that reality seems to have a smallest possible size, a scale below which distance stops meaning anything at all. It's much like an image breaking down into pixels when you zoom in too far. Then you have the speed of light, which behaves less like a natural law and more like a hard processing ceiling, a cap you'd write into a system so it doesn't overload the server. Physicist James Gates even found equations buried in the math of string theory that look exactly like digital error correcting code, literally the same code that runs in your web browser to catch mistakes. Is the universe just dealing with cosmic lag? Look, it doesn't prove we are in a computer, but once you hear this stuff, it is very hard to unhear. So, let's step all the way back from the physics and try to find the solid bottom of our reality using pure logic. A German philosopher named Hans Albert mapped out the ultimate trap regarding our beliefs, often called the Munchausen trilemma. Just think about it. Every single belief hangs off another. You trust your senses, right? Well, why? Because you remember they've worked in the past. Okay, why do you trust your memory? Because so far memory has felt reliable. Each rung of logic just hangs off the one above it. When you climb to the very top of that chain, there is absolutely nothing holding the entire ladder up. You're just arguing in an endless floating circle. Albert actually named this trap after an old folktale. Think of it like a man trying to haul himself out of a sinking swamp simply by grabbing a fistful of his own hair and yanking upward. It's literally impossible. Nobody can prove that you are real. Not the smartest philosopher in the world, and not you. And equally, nobody can prove that you aren't. The question remains permanently, agonizingly open, and you are just stuck inside it. But here is where we begin our ascent back into the light. Because I love this quote. When the mathematician Martin Gardner was asked how he managed to live his life with this massive, inescapable uncertainty hanging over him, he gave what might be the most honest answer ever recorded. He said, "I chose to believe the world is real, not because you could prove it, but because that belief is healthier and it works. It is a purely pragmatic, honest acceptance. You will never get to touch reality bare. You're stuck behind your eyes, working from a picture you can't verify. But you can choose to accept the picture simply because it functions."
Because here is what truly matters, and what I really want you to take away from all of this. Even if you are a brain in a vat, or you're just lines of code in a vast cosmic simulation, the warmth of the person sitting beside you still feels exactly like warmth. The human experience of this universe remains profoundly real, beautiful, and deeply moving. Whether the ground underneath your feet is made of ancient solid rock or complex running code, you are still the one standing on it. You still get to wonder about the absolute majesty of the whole shebang. And that brings us to our final empowering conclusion. There is exactly one undeniable fact that survives all this doubt. No evil demon, no sensory deprivation tank, and no hyper-advanced computer simulation can ever take this away from you. The fact that something, right in this very second, is being experienced at all. That part is definitively happening. Whatever this strange, glitchy universe is, you are in it.